Why don't I fear death? This essay explains how specific occurrences in my life had led me to not worry, fret, be anxious, or fear death in any way. This was not the case when I was younger. I was terrified. I don't expect anyone to trust me simply because I wrote this. You may think I'm as insane as a fruitcake. I've had similar thoughts at times. You already know I'm not making this up, and I believe what I'm saying. Bring me the Bible if this were a courtroom. I do, I'm ready to say. My mother used to tell me as a child that I had an imaginary companion. She stated that I characterized him as a tall man wearing a top hat. Could this have been my guardian angel? I wonder as I reflect. Who knows? But this faded from my recollection over time, and I never gave it any thought until today. I'm completely persuaded that my guardian angel has directly contacted me twice in my life. I had never given it any thought until recently. As I reflected, I thanked him several times for saving my life. Twice. The first time was when I was a stupid, bumbling adolescent. I had just dropped a friend off at his residence, and it was late, around 1 a.m. I was driving down a residential street at around 60 miles per hour in a 30-mile-per-hour zone. On this roadway, there was a junction with no stop signs in either direction. I naively opted to accelerate through the crossroads. I was close to the crossroads when a masculine voice within my head yelled, "Stop!" And I pushed on the brakes, and the wheels locked up. Just then, another automobile darted in front of me. My automobile ended up sideways in the roadway, almost on someone's front lawn. I sat there for a moment, trying to compose myself while shaking and wiping the unpleasant yellow liquid from my clothes. I cautiously engaged the clutch and drove the rest of the way home like a good citizen. I would have been T-boned and dead as a doornail if it hadn't been for his intervention. The second occasion occurred when I was 40 years old. My wife had abandoned me. I was in a deep, dark funk, considering suicide, taking antidepressants, and fresh off the worst phone fight of my life with her. I really lost it as I hung up the phone, bawling my eyes out and asking to God for my life back. I can't recall ever praying to him with more sincerity. I said my amen after around 30 minutes of prayer. Then the male voice entered my thoughts once more. These are his words. Now get a grip of yourself and straighten up. Things will improve. To cut a long story short, my wife and I recently celebrated our 35th wedding anniversary. It wasn't a life or death issue, but it was critical for me at this moment in my life. I didn't think about who was speaking in my head each time. I just accepted it and carried on as if nothing had happened. I didn't hear these words with my ears. They were somehow in my head. My father was diagnosed with oak cell carcinoma in his lung and lymph nodes in September 1975. He'd been a 3-pack-a-day smoker since he was a teenager. My wife, brother, and I were driving up to Dallas from College Station, Texas A&M, when we received a phone call from my mother informing us that his death was imminent. We arrived in plenty of time. He seemed to be waiting for us to arrive so he could finally let go. While fading in and out of awareness, he really spoke to us and inquired how our travel home was going. Within an hour of our arrival, he died. That night, our family began to arrive, and we had people lying all over the home. My wife and I were sleeping on a futon in the study. I was lying in the dark, trying to sleep, when I heard footsteps in the kitchen. I stood up to see who it was. The dark shape of my father stood in the doorway, confronting us. I rubbed my eyes, hoping to see better. He was gone when I opened them again a second later. I sat back down, attempting to figure out if I was suddenly insane. I fell asleep and didn't inform anyone until recently. For years, I assumed I was hallucinating or insane. After reading a research on after-death communication, I began discussing it with my brother and realized that this strange experience had happened to both of us the night our father died. When I told my brother about it, he stated he saw my father that night as well. He heard footsteps down the hall and saw his figure at the doorway to his bedroom. Throughout my life, I've had various medical treatments and operations. They include having my wisdom teeth extracted under general anesthesia, having my left knee's anterior cruciate ligament repaired, having appendicitis, having my gallbladder removed, and having 15 inches of my intestines removed due to diverticulitis. Sometime after my knee surgery, I began getting flashbacks of what I would describe as a near-death experience. At first, I dismissed it as a typical dream and moved on. I recently had the realization that this was not a dream. I frequently forget my dreams. This one I can see clearly, as if it really happened. It's like being on a vacation and remembering what it's like to stand on a beach somewhere. You remember every detail of where you were, which is uncharacteristic in a dream. I recalled standing in a large hall. Other people were standing to my left in a group. I couldn't see their faces, but they were there for me. To my eyes, they appeared to be shadow persons or silhouettes. I recognized their shapes and felt as if I recognized them, but I couldn't tell you who they were. We were all waiting for someone to appear. Then he walked in. "Hello, I am the Son of God," he said as he approached me. In my thoughts, I heard the words. I don't remember anything that happened after that. He appeared to be between 5 and 6 feet tall. He had shoulder-length brown hair and a close-cropped beard. He had a dark or olive skin tone. His eyes were blue, and his nose was what I would call a Roman nose, meaning it was large and bent just a little bit beneath the bridge. Overall, his face appeared normal, and not what I would have expected had I been the artist creating his face. He was dressed in a white robe with a gold belt tied around his waist. I recall the ceiling of the room looking like a night sky with incredibly bright stars. The floor was a highly polished white marble with gray to black mineral veins running through it, and there were some marble steps on one side. The architecture is best described as Greek, but it is in fantastic condition, spanking new and well cared for. I'm not sure why or how I ended up there. I'm not sure how I got back. I can't recall anything else but what I've described here. This occurred several years after my father died. I can't remember the precise date, but the flashbacks began shortly after the knee surgery. I attempted to discuss this with my wife. She claims it was a dream and that I'm describing a Jesus image I saw someplace. In other words, she doesn't believe it and refuses to discuss it further. I also attempted to discuss this with one of my church's elders. This happened shortly following a Bible session in which the question of life after death was extensively covered. I was told that I sounded like a lunatic. I thought it was interesting at the time. Here is someone who claims to believe in a live God and his son, but would not even listen to anything that may support his beliefs. If you don't believe in life after death, why are you here? I asked him. That put an end to my efforts to share my experiences with members of my church. I don't want to be the crazy person who saw Jesus. Here are some further observations I've made on my behavior since my NDE. I've become hyper-intuitive in the presence of people who try to lie to me, and I just know they're lying. I strive to assist people wherever possible, and I feel bad when I miss an opportunity because I was not thinking or simply zoning out. I no longer condemn individuals for their mistakes. They are simply learning how to love others and haven't mastered it yet. I couldn't care less about the things of this world. I could be quite content without all of these things. I enjoy enjoying each day as if it were my last. It used to bother me when people died, but it no longer does. What bothers me is when someone steals another's life or harms someone else. They have no right to take what God has given to them. I once saw a movie with a beautiful sentence that described what I was witnessing. Some things are true whether you believe them or not. We have unseen support watching over us and keeping us safe throughout our lives. After death, there is life. I'm not afraid of dying in the least. Death is simply the beginning of something new. If you believe there's nothing after this life, you're in for a rude awakening.